Absolute Life Crew coming for you. Going to bring out our first monthly challenge. Just to tee it off this episode, it's actually something that I went through just a couple weeks ago. Steven's kind of been going through a similar thing. But I'll start by kind of teeing up the story of I was kind of preparing for a big week at work. We had internal QBRs, kind of positioning, giving an overview of our business and like where we're headed, what we're focusing on this coming quarter, right? And a mixture of that, and I had to think a lot of other things that I had going on in my life. Kind of, I came to a breaking point. And I've always had anxiety my whole life and anxious thing like episodes and whatnot, but nothing that was really like, I've always had anxiety. I've ADHD. You're just kind of always running a million miles an hour. And I've always lived with it. It's always been very comfortable, I guess, uncomfortability that I've lived in with it. But the biggest thing was I completely locked down, like shut down. And I don't know if anybody else, I'm sure others have had this where you're taking on so much. My manager would say, like, you're trying to boil the ocean. Like, you have so many different things that you want to work on, so many things you want to do as a father. You want to be there. You want to be the best version of yourself as a father. As a worker, you want to be the best version of a worker and contribute and be, a top performer. As a husband, as an individual, like you want to challenge yourself and you want to do things, you want to prepare and train, like I was just doing for this Ironman. And there's just so many things that you want to do. And I think sometimes we overcommit ourselves. Overcommit ourselves. And we're like, we can do all these things. I have enough time. I just need to prioritize. And the reality of that is like the power of relaxing and giving yourself time is so much. I think I've always underappreciated it and like how much value it does bring to you, because I just think I could do everything. Like I got time for everything. So I'm not the best at prioritizing. So anyways, I'm getting ready for this week and I'm actually very well prepared and I feel like ready to roll. You know what I mean? And it wasn't just the QBR that was a high pressure thing. I had, external client stuff. I had, personal challenges that I was dealing with, but I had a complete like mental block. I had so much anxiety to where it was debilitating. I couldn't even really make a decision on like whether to get up and do something or stay in bed. And it was crippling to where I couldn't even make a decision. And this went on for like a week. So I ended up, calling in sick, just saying I was sick for the whole week. I went and saw, professional help, went to a psychiatrist, kind of shared everything that was going on. And I'm like, I, of all people, like to think, and this is why we do stuff like the Absolute Life, like I'm trying to push myself and like make sure that I'm being mindful. Like I practice a lot of mindful techniques and practices, whether it's cold plunging, whether it's saunaing, whether it's just physical exercise, whether it's just being alone with no distractions, no technology and that sort of thing. Right. And so it's just strange to me that I was feeling so overwhelmed and I couldn't really get out of like this place of panic. And I completely was a shell of myself. I really hope other people can relate to this because it was just scary. Like I was like, am I ever going to be back to my normal self? Like, am I going to have the confidence I had? Am I going to have, I mean, like so many things go through your head of like, why am I feeling like this? Like, why am I so uncertain of what's going on? Like, and I feel like I've always been relatively confident in my abilities and like what I can achieve and, just kind of winging it, and like, I lost every ounce of like positive affirmations for myself in that week. And, like, I still feel like there's a little bit of it lingering. And, there's a couple things, I guess we can go with directions on this, but like, I just want people to know, like, that shit sucks. And I feel so bad for anybody who's ever gone through that. Like, it just goes back to that saying, you never know what somebody's going through. And like, just try to be a good friend, be a good person. Like, if you notice somebody's a little off, like, just ask them if they're okay. Like, it's crazy how fast it happened to me. It was like in the matter of an hour. I thought I was all good, all prepared, and then all of a sudden I just kind of spiraled. And I couldn't go to sleep. The next morning I woke up, I'm like, I had a couple hours of sleep, and that obviously didn't help, I'm sure, but I was completely shut down. And I was like, I can't go to work. Like I couldn't even make a decision on like what to say or what to do. Like I didn't even want to like be around people. Like even my, I stayed in bed for 4 days, and not that that's healthy either, but like I was so done. I just was like shut everything off, like trying to just like kill all noise and everything. Because I had this crazy amount of like this ball of just anxiety in my stomach and chest, and like the worst feeling I've ever felt, ever, without a doubt. Um,
Yeah.
and I don't know, like I guess we could go a couple directions with this, but like,
Well, I just want to say, first of all, I'm sorry that you had to go through that. It just sounds terrible. Sounds so uncomfortable, and it's just crazy how quick it can happen and you don't expect it.
you're
And
not ready. Yeah.
you when you're thinking of someone like you, like, I'm your good friend, your good buddy, and when I look at you, I see the most confident, you know, just a guy who couldn't be shaken or broken or
I wish that were
I
true.
don't it seems like, from a perspective of someone like you, could shake you. And so just to hear from someone like you, who from an outside perspective is such a confident person, they can have these, not that that took away, your confidence, but like that could feel this anxiety, could feel this, what you described it as, like a breaking point.
It's like
It
a
just makes,
misalignment. Like you feel so out
yeah,
of alignment with your mind, body, and soul. Like you're just like nothing is going together right. Like I just feel like that's the best way to describe it, I guess, is like you just feel so out of alignment with yourself, and like there's all these weird things going on. You're like, what the hell is going, what's happening to me right now? It's like so
yeah.
fast and misunderstanding.
But if someone like you could experience that, then it makes, at least for me personally, it makes me
Yeah.
feel like, man, my hero of a friend Taylor can experience stuff like that. Of course, it's normal if I experience misalignments, if I experience days where I feel off or I feel this anxiety or fears, whatever.
Yeah.
It's normal. And I think anybody out there should know that all people go through these things, and they feel these experiences.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to be honest and be vulnerable and talk about it, because the more we talk about it, we can realize that it is normal, and we can figure out why, what we could do, how we can respond to it. Because like you said, you almost, it kind of just happened also quickly. So
Yeah.
then the only thing you can do is, how are you going to respond to it? But like my question, and the question I have is, like, looking back at it, were there any like signs that this was building up? Was there any feelings like leading up to this breaking point? Or
Yeah.
now that you're looking, or did it really just happen in a split second? Was there any things that you could have noticed to maybe prepare, for
Yeah.
that?
You know what's crazy? I don't know that there's anything I could have done to prepare better, like prepare for it, except for the things that we preach, like, you got to be mindful, like you got to just like be quiet with yourself and learn how to quiet your mind. Like your mind is your own worst enemy, it's also your best friend. But like in the moment, that's what's crazy is like, and I think this is also in a relation to like the big change that's happened in my life, going from a real career path that I really understood. I knew, let's say, a product or a product vertical that I knew very well, and then coming to a product that I'm not so familiar with, in a role that I haven't been doing in several years. And so there's a lot of change and and there's incredible people I work with, all so smart and very versatile in the product. And so coming from a place where like I was more of a seniority role, had a lot more knowledge, like I knew a lot just from the years in project management, and then switching to a product that I didn't really understand, like the value, the competition, like where we stand better and like how the motion is, the ocean is there. And like, so there's a lot of that too that's like kind of humbling, puts you back down. Like, you need to just be curious right now. And like, you don't need to know you don't need to use all your expertise because it's not going to do you any good right now. It's like, if anything, it hurt you worse. So like, I think that's one thing that's a pressure about the job situation. I think also like a big thing that's not related to work at all, but like this whole turning 30, I've kind of built it up. Maybe even though I was trying to not make it a big deal in my own head, I clearly made it a big deal by saying, like, I want to go into my 30s in the best shape of my life. I want to do an Ironman before I turn 30. Ended up being right after I turned 30. But like, I had all of this, like almost behind the scenes feelings about turning 30 that I didn't realize I had. And I was like, oh, everybody makes a big deal out of it. So like, I'm going to go into my 30s in my best shape of my life, like taking the best care of myself and like being the best version of myself, right? That I could possibly be at that point. And so that was, I think, a whole nother portion of it that subconsciously I had a lot of pressure on. And it was a big bookmark in my brain, like turning 30. And so I think I had work stuff as well as personal stuff. And I was working really hard to like be ready for that Ironman. And we'll talk about that in our next episode. But like, I think that there's a lot, and you are your own worst enemy. Like, I even now feel like I've done so much, like retrospectively looking back over this year, all the sacrifices, the changes I've made in my life to be able to prepare for the Ironman, to actually agree to doing something so far out in advance, and then actually following through all those months of training, preparing, the sacrifice to actually then go and do it. Um, you know, that was huge. But again, I think there was a personal side and a professional side that all kind of came together for that to happen, for me to have this breakdown. So again, we have the absolute life stuff we really want to dive in head over heels with and go hard with. Um, there's just all the stuff that comes with trying to set up a business like that. That's, stressful, and it could really kick yourself down if like you're not getting things done to like make the business move. I think it's been a lot slower than I wanted it to be, and I wanted to get things done because of other distractions and things in life. So there's a lot of things happening that kind of came together, I think, for that moment of like, oh my gosh, like, I want to kick ass at my job, but I also know like it's a means to an end. Like, I want to start my own stuff and I want to get out of corporate America. And so I think it's just like all this, like these competing feelings and energies that you're putting into different things and trying to prioritize, and you can't really figure it out. So I don't think I could have prepared for it better. And I think that it was just a combination of all those things kind of hitting up, and then your brain starts going. And that's where I say your mind can be your worst enemy. Like, because then you're like, well, you haven't really got the needle moved on this and now this. And again, just boiling the ocean, like too many priorities that aren't the same, but they kind of are competing. And you end up trying to do them all, and then nothing really moves forward with any of them. And so you feel like shit about yourself because you didn't do what you said you were going to do. And it's easy to beat yourself up instead of just being like, okay, like
Yeah.
what's the next thing I got to do? Like, but just make the to-do list simple and just go and do it. And that's it. Right. But we
Mhm.
overcomplicate things in our head.
Well, and I wonder how many things subconsciously in the back of our head are we putting on ourselves without even realizing, like,
Yeah.
a couple of the things that you mentioned that made me think was like, you know, uh, be your desire to be curious and um, while you're wanting to be curious and be in this place where you're like, it's okay if I don't know everything.
Yeah.
It's okay if I haven't figured everything out, if I haven't completed every task that I've set out to complete. But I think in the back of our head, we put all these pressures, we stack this pressure. And this is on top of what our job is already stacking on us, our
Uh-huh.
relationships, with our kids and our spouse and, our friendships. Like, we already have
Yeah.
enough pressure naturally stacked on top of us. For
Yeah.
us to then be ambitious people who are passionate,
Yeah.
we then put all these other things on top of it, and you only have so much time in the day, and And so we can overwhelm ourselves, I think. You know, you have to be realistic about what can you accomplish.
Mm-hmm.
And if am I putting too much on my plate at a time? Am I trying to boil the ocean?
Mm-hmm.
And so like you were describing, like having some quiet time with yourself to really understand what am I expecting of myself, and getting really clear about like
Mm-hmm.
what is what is my job expecting of me, what is my relationship, what is all being put onto my plate, um, because sometimes I feel like we're not even clear on that, and so
Yeah.
we don't even know where to begin, but we know that we feel like we're not um, checking off everything. So it feels like we're
Yeah.
failing, or it feels like we're not
Yeah.
living up to this grand expectation that we put on ourselves. And the
Yeah.
truth is other people, I think the majority of the time, like our the business partners, the people we're working with or whatever, they don't have these super grand expectations. We do ourselves. And so being in this place where you are just wanting to learn and wanting to uh improve is a good place to be, because like it's okay to make mistakes, it's okay to not have everything
Yeah.
accomplished, but at the same time, being clear on exactly who you are and what you want
Yeah.
uh is something that I feel like helps. And so on your journey in the last like bit of time since you've kind of overcome this, uh what do you think has become more clear to you? Have you kind of gotten a little bit more clarity on what was causing it? Yeah, I mean, you described these pressures, but are you starting to understand what was causing it, and now what can help it?
Yeah. I haven't totally figured it out, but I can tell you I definitely don't have the anxieties that I had. And like I'll tell you, I got a prescription for something, and I'm not a huge fan of prescription drugs. Like I think the best version of yourself is a version that you were born with, right? But I think in some circumstances, like there are moments when you need something, you know. And this was one of those particular times. Like I was in a mental prison cell. Like it was horrible. And I got prescribed Klonopin, which is like a benzo. It's definitely a downer. I really hate downers. I hate it all. But it knocked me out. I was like lethargic for 2 days. And I only took like half of what was given the prescription, half of like the dosage one time. And it was just one time I took it, but it got rid of the anxiety like pit in my stomach. And it didn't help with all the mental problems I was dealing with, but like the anxiety was gone. So it slowed everything down, just slowed the processing down. And then I was able to just kind of be with it. And shout out to my manager. Like she was so awesome about it. I just told her straight up, like, hey, I'm not actually sick. I'm going through something I've never experienced in my life before. I was just very open and honest with her, like, because that's who I want to be. Like, I don't want to bullshit. I want to be honest with people. And like, I know some people, it's better to save face sometimes, and maybe you don't share this stuff. But I was like, I would rather her know what I'm going through, because this isn't like, that's just who I am. You're right, to each their own. So anyway, I told her, and she was so awesome about it. And I'll never forget, like, that's just good people. Like when somebody can just disconnect work from something that's like so almost taboo. I think it's getting a lot better now, but like mental health is getting a lot more notice than it's been, especially in America. I think we're really far behind in mental health. I think every country is, to be fair, but I think we're definitely a leader in the ranks of like not putting enough money into it. But anyways, she was awesome and just said, take the time, like don't even think about work, like do what you need to do. And I did. And I'll tell you, like, I also asked for, like, is there something else? Because like I don't want to be knocked out for 2 days, like can't do anything because I had a little panic attack, you know? And and so he gave me some other ideas, and I ultimately went with one that was like a blood pressure medicine. And so I've hardly taken it since, but every morning I'd wake up that I was like going to go into the office, and like I'm such a social person. I don't know why, but I've been getting anxiety about like going into the office, and I'm like, that is where I flourish. Like it's so abnormal to me. I'm dealing with so many like almost like confidence issues that like I haven't had in years, especially about like even like joining client meetings or like meeting new people. I'm like, that is, I kick ass at that. I love meeting new people, but like for some reason I've been like completely opposite and like kind of nervous about these interactions. So anyways, I've been taking that, and it's like something you could take 4 times a day. Like it's nothing crazy. It's like probably not even as bad as like taking ibuprofen, you know. All it does is it like slows down your heart rate. So for people that have high blood pressure, it helps them not have a heart attack, right? It's preventative measure stuff. But the idea is that it takes away from the like rising heart rate, because that's what it calms down. So instead of it's getting rid of the symptom of an anxious like attack or whatever. And so that's kind of the idea, is like if we take away that symptom, like it kind of simmers it down a little bit, and it helps a lot. So I would take that before I go into the office, and it'd be like once a day I would take it. I haven't taken it in weeks, but um, so that's another thing. Like other people out there, like just something to think about. I don't know what it's called, but
Yeah.
that's an easy option that's not so intrusive, not so like neurological, and not going to get so much in your way. If you're like me and you like to be as like clean as possible.
Mhm.
But what was I going to say? Just I sympathize for everybody out there. And I think a lot of this is really the conversation too of like turning 30, like is such a bookmark. My mom was working with somebody who said turning 30 was, he's like, turning 40, no problem. Turning 50, no problem. I'm not worried about turning 60, but turning 30 was the hardest age I ever had to turn. And I'm like,
Oh
man, I
wow.
get that. Like, do I get that? Because it's just, I think it is one of those like bookmarks. 13 going on 30, like the movie. Like we have a lot of stigma about turning 30. And I think especially in your 20s leading up to it, it's like, oh no, you know what I mean? Like I think that it's
Yeah,
just naturally
when you're
there
in your
in society.
20s, when you're in your 20s, you're like, I could still be figuring it out. I can still be messing
Yeah.
around. I can still be young. You
Mm-hmm.
almost still like you feel like you're still connected to those college years and those
Yeah,
like young and dumb years. But then you
exactly.
turn 30 and you're like, okay, I should be figured it out by I should have figured it out by now. I should be
Yeah.
like way more settled and secure
Yeah.
and stable,
Yeah.
and any bit of instability makes you feel like you're doing something wrong
Yeah.
or
Well, and it's like
yeah.
I think one of these things too is it's like you start looking at everything around you. And I think this is what I've been really going through, is like a refresh of my life. Like looking at the things I have, my house, like the kids, like the car, whatever. Like you just kind of start looking at these things that you've accumulated in the last 10 years since becoming an adult, quote unquote, right? And you're like, okay, I mean, like I've got this. And it's almost like, is not just like work related, but like, is the rat race worth the like my happiness? Is like, are all these things, and like you start, and especially for me, I've been feeling like I want to be passionate, like whatever I'm doing. And I think that it's really like if you have passion, you can achieve great things. And like that's when you find that life really comes together. Like I'm passionate about being a father, and like I absolutely love all the time I can get with my kids. I would leave work in a heartbeat to spend time with my kids. Like I will always prioritize my kids, my family, like first over anything. And that's something that I'm passionate about, right? So when you feel that kind of passion, you everything else kind of feels lethargic and empty. And so you kind of want more of that. Like naturally, you're like, I want something that's going to keep me passionate. And I think with work, it comes that way too. Like if you're not passionate about it, or you don't feel like you're actually bringing value, it's really hard to get on that horse and like do it every day. And I think we both come from a place of like, when you're in the right spot at the right time. Like you can feel the energy, you feel the excitement, you feel the passion, and it just feels right. And I think that's what I'm still searching for on that front from a financial security perspective of like, how do I meet my finances and my passions together to create something that I truly believe in? And I know that like the absolute life is one of those ultimate goals. And I think that that's what's going to hopefully get us there. But it's something that like I was telling Jade, I was like, it's just something like I don't necessarily want to be an expert on anything, but I am passionate about helping people and like motivating people. That stuff, like I love that. You know what I mean? It just, and I know you're the same way. Like you feel so great when you see it click for somebody else or you see somebody else like get that feeling. Like we feel it. We're so empathic that we feel their excitement when they achieve that something that maybe we kind of helped them push that direction. And you're just like, that is what is like I get passion out of that. So it's like, how do I get that in a a job? And again, going back to everything and everything we want the absolute life to be is all these ideas of like, how can we help people? How can we motivate people through our challenges, through our hard times like we're talking about right now, like things that suck, but like how do we open it up and have a conversation about it that's like, dude, you're not alone in this. Life is freaking hard. And I hope that you can find solidarity and like hearing firsthand what we're going through, and we get to lift you guys in a different way that we just, that's what we want. So anyway, that was a
Yeah,
total rant, but I just feel like I just felt like I had to say that. Like there's this re-evaluation of your life that happens, and you start looking at like the decisions you've made, like how you've gotten to this point. Like, is this something you want to do for another 10 years? Is that the same direction you're going to keep going? Or like now it almost feels like there's more push to shove now than ever to make a change than to keep going, right? Like, and
yeah,
because you're like, now I got the experience, I know what this road looks like, and I know what it's going to look like because I have 10 years doing it. So like, there's something else I'm sure out there that's going to give me a lot more back that I'm not necessarily, um, looking at. Maybe it's
yeah.
something we haven't
And
thought
some
of yet. So,
yeah, something that you've shared is like made me think about how like you know one of the things that caused you some anxiety and some fear was from you had some things that you wanted to be doing, some things you were passionate about, and you weren't doing those things, right? You've kind of had this realignment of your priorities about your family and about makes you happy. Is it
mhm,
is it is it just money that you're chasing, and you've kind of realized that that's not exactly in alignment with what you're passionate about.
right.
And it made me think about that quote where it's like action cures fear,
Hmm.
and indecision, postponement, and those things fertilize fear.
Yep.
And just like with anything that we're doing, if we're just sitting there thinking about it, we can overthink, we can develop some anxiety. But as soon as we just like go for it, just do it.
Uh-huh.
I'm sure some of like, especially on your journey to becoming, doing the Ironman or half Ironman, and um, you had some fears and anxieties around it. But as soon as you just started running or started swimming
Yeah.
or started biking, every day that you did it while practicing too,
Hmm.
you developed confidence through action,
Yeah.
right? And I think that's something that we continue to see is that when we're just the more we just sit and think, it causes this like uh there's a opportunity for a leak
like if there's an opportunity for fear to creep in,
Yeah.
um, and there's something about just going out and doing it,
Yeah.
going out and acting, and I've seen that in my own life that if I'm having fear about something, like it's probably because I'm sitting and thinking too much.
Yeah.
Um, when you know if you review some of the things that you've been talking to me about, where has been this like shift in mindset? What has shifted in your mindset in like this new uh future for this new future for Taylor Dippo?
Yeah. Um, yeah, this new what you call it, seasons. It's a new season of life for Taylor Dippo.
Yes.
I think as you turn 30, you really look at everything and you're like, what do I want to do differently? What have I done? And like, oh, gosh, what shifted is your priorities just change. And I think like your alignment with those priorities become very more apparent. They become just like non-negotiables. And I think like the kids, the way I want to parent, the way I want to be involved with my kids, like that becomes like there's no, I would never put anything above that. Like if I was gonna get fired because I was at one of my kids' recitals, like I'd get fired. I'm gonna be at my kid's recital. That's no. I'm sorry. This job is just another job. Like I think the career perspective is not very like uh like I just don't buy into the whole thing. Like you can always change and shift and do something different. And so I think it's just I have this belief of like I can do what I want to do. I can make a living off whatever I want to do. But I think the biggest thing is in your mind, you're just like, this is a non-negotiable, and you really tighten your hold on those. And that's what I feel like I've done is like family's number one. That's huge for me. Um, being there for my kids, like whether it's playing, especially playing, like having fun because they need that, experiencing life. Like I'll never put money before an experience, and I've always been that way. Which is probably why I'm not the most, fiscally responsible. But I think you just want to have things you really have a different perspective of what's important, and that changes in different parts of your life. When your kids get older, they're in high school, they have more freedom, you're probably not so focused on spending all that time with them, right? Because one, they don't want to probably spend that time with you and whatnot, the different seasons of parenthood, right? But right now, this is when it's important. This is when you're still a cool parent because they don't know otherwise, and they are learning so much from what you're doing every day. And so I think
Yeah.
that's why I'm pushing myself, like the Iron Man, like all these things. Like if I have to have a why, it comes back to if there's one thing I want my kids to get out of like life is, and what they can get out of me is just like I truly believe anybody can do anything, and I want them to see that firsthand. So I want them to see me doing these incredible things and battling through adversity, because I want them to be proud, and I want them to see like you can do anything. You just got to do it. And me going through this, whether I ever figure it out and become a great success, to whatever that determination is for you, whatever success means to you, um I think I am learning how to do that and how to live that way. And I want my kids to take out of life that you can do anything, and you don't have to live the 9 to 5. You can find other ways. Like it's just what is most important to you in life. Is it having a family and making sure that you're financially stable? Is it traveling the world? Is it experiencing the seven wonders of the world? Like all those things, right? There's so many different ways to live, and I think that we've been conformed to like see life as like this is what you do, and these are the phases, and this is how you make your money, and this is how you stay loyal and this is how it pays off. And I think everything from the loyalty part to um, just what life can actually be now is completely challenged than what it's been for the last century. Like it's not just get a job, have a family, have have kids, grow old and die. Like I think we're challenging that every day with the way people are making their money a lot more passively. If anything, more, I think more people now are working in something that they're passionate about than before, because of social
Yeah.
media, because you know what I mean? Like there's a lot of people challenging the standard way of making money and making a living and having financial freedom. And I think that's the real, like, what is it to you thing, And I think that's where
Yeah.
I'm having a lot of challenge in mental Olympics in my head of like, what is it really for you? And what is, financial freedom for you? What is, you know, how do you want to live the rest of your life? And is it, being so like career driven to be able to then take a couple trips a year and do that stuff, or is it living on the road? Like what is that for me? And I
Yeah.
think I'm challenging all things that I've thought I was working towards in the last decade. Now I'm looking at life thinking like, and I still haven't figured it out. When I figure it out, I'll let you know. And if somebody else figures it out, let me know. I think each person has their own perspective, and you just got to go with what you feel is right. But
Yeah. I mean,
that's a
it would
loaded
be
question,
easy.
man.
It would be easy to never question anything and just to
Yeah.
stay with the same job for 40, 50 years until you retire, till your
Yeah.
kids are all grown up and left out of the house,
When
till
I hear
maybe
that,
you're
I commend
divorced.
people. I commend people for that. I
Yes.
don't know how people could do that, the same thing for 20, 30 years. Like that's impressive. I'm not like my
Yeah.
brain doesn't work that way.
But
Or
but I
maybe because I
think,
haven't found the thing I love. Maybe that's my argument with
yeah,
myself.
and obviously there's situations where people just find what they love, they're passionate about, they stick with it and they stay with that, their whole life. But there also is situations where people never question their situation, they never question their relationships, or they never ask themselves why. That was something that you said, that you're like finding your why
Mm-hmm.
and finding, you're now discovering what's important to me.
Mm-hmm.
You're discovering, you're like, why am I doing the things I'm doing? Right.
Yeah.
You're not just working to work. You're not just like spending your time, with no purpose. But
Yeah.
now you're being a little more careful about, like, okay, is it to support my family and what matters most to me? Is it to lead me to this next step in my journey? And then how you're spending your time outside of your job, you're asking yourself, how does this align with what I'm passionate about, what I care about? I care about helping people? I care about
Mm-hmm.
this or that, So asking yourself the why is realigning your life. Asking yourself what's important to me and why I'm doing the things I'm doing, I think is you're opening the doors to change.
Yeah.
Questions are the doors that open change. And so, there can be, I think, a season of uncomfortable. It may be a long season. You may always be uncomfortable if you're asking these questions that require change, right?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
uncomfortable
Change.
to realize that you're like living your life in a way that's not exactly aligned with what's important to you or aligned with what you're passionate about. It's getting uncomfortable, and I can imagine there's going to be anxiety, there's going to be fear, and that's all part of this process of realizing that you need to change, and realizing that there's uh enlightenment happening in your
Yeah.
life. And so I think just like in our life, when we experience pain is just our body telling us that something is wrong,
Yeah.
right? Pain is saying, like, somebody said it to me when I had the worst toothache of my life. Like, it was like the worst experience, like the
You're like,
worst like
shut
3
up. I
days
don't
I've
want to
ever
hear
had.
this.
But this girl who was telling me, she said,
Yeah.
like, listen, your body is telling you that something is wrong. And I'm like, at the time, I don't know how much it helped, but I really thought about it after. It's like pain, that it's wrong. And same thing with like the anxiety you're feeling or fear or this uncomfortable, like, misalignment in your life. It's
Yeah.
a message. And
Yeah.
you should look at it like, okay, there's something that needs to change. I'm onto something. I'm figuring it out.
Mm-hmm.
And the more honest you are, the more questions that you ask, the more willing you are to kind of really lift up the hood and see what's going on. you know
Yeah.
I think it brings you closer to where you should be.
Yeah.
And I think you're putting in the work to get there. I mean, and we all have to go through that uncomfortable. If you're not willing to get uncomfortable, then you're probably not willing to change.
Mm-hmm.
And you're an example to me. You're an example to me of putting in this work. And despite being uncomfortable, you go out and do a half Ironman and do something as amazing as that. Despite being kind of having this midlife crisis at 30 years old, you still are going
Yeah.
out and you're putting in the work. And so I mean, I think you're the same as is anyone trying to make a big change. And that's what we're all about at Absolute
Yeah.
Life, is making changes, figuring this thing out,
Mm-hmm.
getting uncomfortable, asking those questions so that we can eventually, live our absolute life, eventually
Yeah.
be in
It's just a
alignment with our passion.
Yeah, and I just always try to remind myself too, like in those dark times and you're mentally up in your head case, I try to remind myself like that it's about how you do it and how you approach these things. Like so, and that's what when you come to these things, you're having a hard time and you're like challenge, it's like, but how I show up is gonna determine whether I'm feeling it or not. Like I gotta show up, I gotta do this stuff, and like that's a lot of it's been from that point on of when I finally like I went back to work later that week and whatnot, but it was like taking that time and like really realigning like what does Taylor stand for, like and I tell my kids, like we've talked about in previous episodes, like dippos do hard things. And I ask my kids now, like, what do dippos do, when they're like having a fit, they don't want to go to dance or they don't want to go to preschool. And what do dippos do? And they say hard stuff, like they do hard things. And so I gotta live that and live what I preach, right? But man,
Yeah.
just knowing that like it's how we show up, whether you want to be there or not. Like, and it's so something like a bomb says, like, if your kids, like we heard this growing up, like it's you gotta do it. You made the commitment, you gotta do it, and you signed up for this, you gotta do it.
Oh, absolutely.
And
And
I just
it's
hope
like,
people, whoever's listening, I'll just say this, like I would love to hear about your stories. Like if you've like dealt with this similar thing, because I felt so alone, like when it happened, and you feel like you can't really explain how you're feeling. And I feel like I'm pretty articulate and like I like to really like talk about how I'm feeling and whether it's good. And I always associate emotions with things, but like I felt so completely lost and hidden in a dark hole. I am curious how other people were able to figure it out, and like because I ended up just going and like going to the gym and like swimming and running, biking, and like sitting in the hot tub. But like just I had to get out of my house and like just like
yeah,
go and be around other random people and like just kind of be out in society, I guess. But it's hard, especially in winter. And we've talked about this. Like I think it was a mixture too of seasonal depression that kind of led into the anxiousness. I'd been home. Jade was gone all the weekend before, and I was with the kids at home all weekend. So like there's so many things. And I think a lot of times our bodies just, the psychiatrist I saw, he said, sometimes like your brain's a muscle, just like every other part of your, every other muscle in your body, like it can get overworked. And if you're driving it a million miles an hour, like it's gonna cramp up. It just like, when I got out of my swim in the Ironman, like my calf cramped up. But it's the same idea that like if you ran 10 miles every day, like your legs are gonna hurt. You know, like it's not sustainable to do long runs every single day. Your body's gonna, you're gonna, you know, have an injury. Something's gonna happen because your body just can't run like that, right? Or whatever.
Yeah.
So that was what I thought was an interesting thing. I think we forget our brain's a muscle. Like when he said that, I was like, yeah, you're right. It is. It's like it's a muscle. It makes sense. Like, and so it can get exhausted too. And this is a signal. It goes into a shut off mode. Like sirens, we're not helping you fire any of your neurons, you know, neural pathways, because like you overworked us. You need to shut us down. You're doing too much. Like, and that's what happens. You have these episodes.
Get
So
get more rest, you know.
yeah, there's a lot.
And you know,
Nutrition
and
too.
talk
It's
through it.
crazy.
With the times that you're feeling alone, or you're feeling lost, or you're feeling like you just don't know what to do,
Yeah.
I think, just talking through it, just call someone and just talk. It can
Yeah.
be hard to call somebody because you feel like no one can
No,
understand.
for real. And I think we're
uh
all getting more disconnected than ever. Like I know I'm not the best at like reaching out to my friends anymore. And like I used to just always check in on people all the time. And like I've noticed my capacity has shrunk so much. I like forget. I completely forget to reach out to people, and I don't make like a conscious effort to like get together
yeah.
with friends as much, you know. And I almost need that nudge from my friends too, because I've become a lot more you know, my world shrunk a ton. So anyway, use your
All of your
friends.
friends,
Yeah.
all of the friends that you've ever made, that's your team. It's
Yeah.
always good to have good team, more team members, but like, utilize your team. Remember, this is your team. And
People need
so,
friends, man. Like,
yeah, treat them as a team. And that's what we're trying to build here at Absolute Life. Is we're trying to build a community that people can come to and rely on and be together and lift up each other. And they can, when they don't know where else to go, they can be like, hey, I have some people at Absolute Life that are going to lift me up. And
yeah.
creating this attitude for life, for helping each other. I love the quote by Gandhi. My friend used to always quote it. He said, we're all just walking each other home.
Yeah.
And it's
good
so
one.
true. We need each other. But like, the last thing that I would say before we kind of close out is,
Yeah.
when you have if you're trying to solve a puzzle, it would be very difficult if you just looked at one piece and you kept all the pieces in a box and you just looked at the piece and you tried to put the puzzle together like one by one. The way to figure out a puzzle, you got to lay all the pieces out. You got to really
Yeah.
lay it out. You got to
Color
unpack it.
coordinate. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you gotta pull everything out. And I relate that to like the puzzle of life. You gotta talk through it. You gotta get it all out of you. It doesn't help keeping it in the box or keeping it in your head. You
Yeah.
need to get it out. And so the more we kind of just create these spaces with our friends, create these spaces with our spouses, with just getting all of it out of your head and just talking through it.
Yeah.
As you unpack that, you'll start to see the whole puzzle and see the whole picture.
Yeah.
And I think when we come to those times where we don't know what to do and there's a puzzle to solve and we feel like something's misaligned,
Mm-hmm.
just unpack everything all out, talk through it, and the pieces will start to connect. You'll start to realize, there was a quote by Kobe Bryant would be asked about if he gets nervous before games, and he would just talk about, well, I just unpack it, and I ask myself, why am I nervous? What's the worst thing that can happen?
Yeah.
And he kind of starts asking those questions, and there's so many different things and pressures in life, and different things that we stack upon ourselves and are stacked on us by others. But when we talk through it and we really lay it out and we really unpack it and break it down, it's not as wild as it seems. It's not as crazy as it seems. And we can figure it out. We can ask the right questions.
Yeah.
And we will. And that's what we're doing here. We're continuing to help each other home and help each other figure this puzzle of life out.
We're figuring it out one challenge at a time, you know. Well, look, everyone, just want to say I love you all. I love everybody. I love what we're doing here. I love you, Stephen, for being part of this and agreeing
Love you,
to be a
brother.
part of this. This is just it like we always say, if nothing comes of this, at least we get the conversation with each other, and like that's enough for us. And I just hope it helps other people in the challenges that they foresee, and things that they have to deal with, the different trials and tribulations we all got to go through, man. Life is tough. We got to lean in together and support each other. So use your network, use your people, use your friends, use your family. Call somebody up today, just ask them how they're doing that you haven't talked to in a while. Just check in, get a pulse check, like how you really doing, you know. But I love y'all.
Yes. Call
Thanks
your
for joining.
friends.
Yep. Thanks for joining, y'all. Y'all take care. Cheers.